Well, hello and welcome to Wisdom on Wednesday. And today we want to welcome Dr. Kira Wilson from Florida. She's going to be talking about lessons in everyday interactions and how parent-child interactions are necessary for biblical training and academic success. And she's going to be offering ideas on how we can organically, as parents, do this throughout the day in our homes. And Dr. Wilson got her doctorate from Liberty University on this very topic, where she did research on parenting practices that actually foster academic success. She is the founder of Covenant Academy, another university model school in Florida. And she's also the founder of lifeandlearning.net, which is an educational resource for parents. I'm hoping we get to hear more about that today, Dr. Wilson. She and her husband live in Florida, where they enjoy spending time with their children and grandchildren. And I know she shares with my heart in that she wants to help students experience the gospel and reach their full potential in Christ. So I'm just going to hand it over to Dr. Wilson now to hear her great ideas.
Thank you so much, Ellen. It is great to be with you and to be with your audience. And as you mentioned, I did my research for my doctorate in parenting practices that foster academic success. And one of the things that I heard over and over again as I talked with young people about their parents and the things that they felt like made a big impact on their life was that parent-child interaction. The thing that about it, they said it was constant. The parents were always talking to them. You know, they had meals together. They read together. They discussed things together. And so, as not only is that, you know, that's what Deuteronomy 6
Yes.
charges parents to do. When
Right.
you rise up, when you sit down, when you lay down, it's all day long. You're always interacting with your children, and it's such a blessing, and it's a command. So, but it's just a wonderful opportunity that parents have to instill their biblical worldview, a biblical worldview with their children, and to be able to train them in the things of the Lord, but also to share with them all the wonderful things that God has created about the world, through people in the world, through books, through so many different things. So as we look at this idea of interacting with your children, of course, as parents, that happens organically. You're with your children more than anyone else, especially in a university model school, which I
Yes.
love.
Yes.
So not only do you remain influential, the most influential person in their life, but you have more opportunity than anyone else. So organic learning opportunities come in every situation, really every moment by moment. So literally when you're walking by the way, when you're taking walks, when you're cooking or cleaning, when you're doing laundry. So a couple years ago, we were walking around the block with our grandchildren, and we came upon a fire hydrant. And at that time, our granddaughter was probably 3, but we took a minute and we talked about that fire hydrant because, you know, it's right there in the neighborhood. It's something that she sees all the time. Does she know what it is? Does she know its purpose? Does she know she's seen fire trucks, gotten excited about fire trucks and heard sirens and all of that? Does she know that if there was a fire, that the fire trucks would come and hook up a hose to that fire hydrant, and that's how they would get water? And so those kinds of things, just as we go about our life, being able to talk to them about how things are connected. Our youngest granddaughter very recently came out into the living room where we were sitting and pulled up her little shirt and pointed to her belly button and said something about her belly button. I can't even remember what it was, but to me, that was an opportunity, right? So we talked about the fact that her belly button was connected to an umbilical cord, which is how she got food when she was in her mommy's tummy. And it just provided a great opportunity. She's the one that brought it up. Let's tell you something about your belly button. And so, of course, there's also wonderful opportunities to talk about the Lord as well. I was in a classroom yesterday observing, and they were doing a language arts lesson, and they were talking about the writing process. And I love that my teacher said that writing honors God, that it's a way that we can honor God and communicate our thoughts to others in a way that brings him honor. And so just walking through the day with our children, reminding them that the things that we do bring honor to him, that there are lessons in life that we can learn in the simplest manner. I happen to have a washing machine, a new washing machine that's got the glass top. And my granddaughters got little stools and climbed up there and watched the whole process. Of course, they'd never done that. They were so excited to see how clothes got washed. And it seems silly, but those little things provide a framework of knowledge and background knowledge that will help them when they then go on to learn other things. And so background knowledge is quite important in the learning process. And so as they come into a classroom and they're reading books or the teacher's asking them about things, everything that they've already learned, they bring to the table. This morning in chapel, I was talking about, let's see, we were talking about the armor of God, and we were talking about the Gospels and how all four of the Gospel writers, the stories overlap. And one little boy brought up a story or an example of something a conversation that he had had with his parents about seeing things from different perspectives. A car accident from different sides of the street. It still happened, but they had a different perspective on it. And so that conversation with his parents helped him to be able to understand the concept of the Gospels and how the Gospel writers all saw things from a different perspective. So that interaction with our children, it offers them so much more than that information at that particular moment. It's providing a worldview. It's providing them background information that's going to help them as they move forward. So obviously,
I just wanted to just interject that I love what you're saying. You're a grandparent and so am I, and we know how fast time goes, right?
Yes.
So this is really about making every day count.
Yes.
Because every day does count. And I'm so grateful that our university model schools actually give parents this time to even interact on what the kids are learning and to take advantage of the short time that they have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you don't get the time back. And so redeem the time. Just, it's such a blessing. And when they're younger, you've got this opportunity to, again, share your biblical worldview so that they're understanding God a little bit more. So, you can go about that in a variety of ways. One of them I mentioned, just asking them good questions, but also responding to their questions. There's been times where I hear children ask a question and it's sort of dismissed or it's answered in one or two sentences when there was an opportunity there to expound on it and really dive a little bit deeper and use it as a teachable, organic moment, teaching moment. I will say that when we do that, we need to be careful that we're giving them the information that they're asking for and that we're using it in that way, but that we don't overload them and then where they kind of walk away because you've given them too much information, kind of learning when to stop. You want to stop while they're still engaged in what you're talking about and come back to the topic another time. Because again, you've given them a little bit of information, they've got some background knowledge. So next time that topic comes up, you can go from there and move on. They don't have to know everything at the very beginning.
I remember a speaker telling us in the audience that we don't want to have these, once in a time lectures. We want to have a long conversation that keeps going. I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes. And especially with middle school students, middle school students keep it short because they perceive anything that's too long as a lecture. Where little ones don't have that perception. They're like little sponges and will soak up everything. But so, knowing the age and knowing even the topic is probably important for how much information you give and, to what extent that you give. But so responding to their questions is good. Having conversation at the dinner table. The participants in my study all had family dinner together, which was very unusual because they were not all.
Okay.
Okay. I think we're okay, right?
Yes.
So the majority of them happened to be, I didn't go about choosing Christian homes, but that's what I ended up with based on the other criteria I was looking for. But even those that didn't come from a Christian home, and basically the participants in my program were young adults who had either a master's or a doctorate degree. And they were looking back on the parenting practices that they perceived to have fostered that academic success. So even those that were non-Christian still said how important that family conversation was. As they got older, there was conversation about politics and things going on in the culture and in society. And so all of that is just so valuable. And not only is it valuable for their academic success, but it builds the relationship. And ultimately, that's what it's really all about, right? Because we want to maintain that relationship again, which is why I love the University Model School, because parents have that opportunity to develop that relationship, which is long lasting, and you can't replace it. You can't replace it. And time is needed to develop it. So,
well, and with the family meals, I know that as the kids get older, parents sometimes have to be creative. I see that with my own grandchildren who are in those, many of them are middle school and even high school age. And I just encourage my kids, and I know what they do is they find that time when everyone can be together, even if it's late, and they do it whenever they can, or they at least have a parent and a child eating, or if you're traveling to a sporting event,
yes.
then take your meal with you. Make sure that it's a priority and do the best you can around their schedules.
Yeah, it's hard, I want to exhort and encourage parents to do this. I don't want anyone to feel condemned when they can't.
Right.
And so and I do know, especially if you have multiple children and you're going in 10 different directions because you've got all these different sports or different kinds of events going on. But whether, the University Model School allows you 2 or 3 mornings, maybe your breakfast is going to be really long, and that's when your devotion time is, and that's when you're really connecting. But finding the time is so important.
Sure is.
So, and, as they're coming home with content information, it's also great to interact with that. So there are some parents who are going to be very involved in the learning process of their kids coming home. And I think depending on different university model schools, there are some where the children are a little bit more independent, working on the information at home, or as they grow older, they're more independent. But I like to encourage parents that even as they get older and they're able to do that content on their own, to still ask questions and still interact with what they're learning. And I also tell parents that, you don't have to have read the literature book to ask good questions and know whether or not your children are understanding it and whether they're getting something out of it. If you learn how to ask good questions, you can ask good questions without having read the book. What have you learned about the character? How is the character, would you consider the character to be following biblical standards? What is the conflict that's in the story? What have you learned from the conflict? You can ask those questions without knowing what the conflict is.
Right.
So it's good to interact with the academic material as well.
That's great. That's really great.
So I would just, as far as those interactions, everything that you do, you've got time now in our model to be able to change tires, change oil, do laundry, cook, clean, go different places and enjoy learning together. I just think that learning together happens all the time if we take those opportunities to just expound a little bit on what it is that they're learning. And especially when they're younger, if they develop a hunger for that kind of learning, you're not going to get resistance. If you're jumping into this with a middle schooler, it might be like, I want to go play on my device. But if you start when they're young, and that's just a part of the culture of your family. And then I would say, if you have older children, begin to do it, but just know that you might be met with resistance, and you have to sort of develop in them an appetite for that kind of interaction. But you can develop that.
That is so true. And I see so many times with our parents, if it's not working in the middle school, parents have to make the adjustment to maintain that relationship and those interactions. And the beauty of all this is, as we figure out how to maintain interactions with our kids, no matter what age they're at, then we have a lasting relationship with our kids into adulthood, and that's what we want. There's no
Absolutely.
influence without relationship, and it starts with these
Mm,
regular, consistent interactions, whether they're 10 seconds with that middle school kid or longer with that elementary kid. And since time is wrapping up, Dr. Wilson, I just want to thank you, but I also want to invite you back. I know we've just started this topic, and it's so near and dear to my heart. I love the fact that I get to participate in the home days with my grandchildren and have that opportunity, even as a grandparent, to see the beauty of this. And so I just want to be able to continue this conversation in the future. So I hope
yeah,
you're
I
willing to
would
come
love to.
back.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you
I would love
so
to.
much. Thank you
Thank you
so
for
much.
having me.